Stacey Blackwell. I'm Clint and this is Strength and Conditioning on the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Stacey, it's been a little while. You had the bye week last week after an impressive 34-0 victory over Missouri. Now everybody's been turning their attention to Alabama LSU this weekend. First of all, how you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm great, man. Excited for football to be back. I guess we talked in the pre-recording of how the election kind of interfered with everything, and just the way the bye week where it happened to land at is just kind of it's felt like a month off instead of a week. So excited for football to be back. Also, basketball is here, so it's an exciting time. Now that November is here, you have college basketball, you have college football, especially with the expanded playoff, and everybody's interest growing in that. So it's an exciting time, and I'm ready for kickoff tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean it's gotten here slow, but in some ways it's it's really sped up the last couple of days. And when you look at like where Alabama had been, what a crazy run when you think about it with Georgia. We've talked about it 1,000 times, the highs of that Georgia game, the lows, and finishing on, obviously a high point at the end, but a lot of people more so focused on that second half. And then you saw what happened against Vanderbilt, and then you saw what happened against South Carolina, and then you saw what happened against Tennessee. And it's just like, that's just such a, 3.5 games, rough performances. But what we've come to realize is Georgia's one of the best teams in the country. We already knew that, but Vanderbilt's pretty darn good. I think a lot of people have come around on that fact, even though they didn't want to give them any credit because they couldn't get past A, the name Vanderbilt, and B, the Georgia State game, which kind of just confirmed a lot of preconceived notions about this Vanderbilt team. And we've also learned that South Carolina is a pretty darn good football team. Tennessee they have their struggles, but they're number 7 in the country right now for a reason. They're figuring out a way to get things done and get wins. And so while Alabama was not playing good football and you can't really justify a lot of what was going wrong, you can also say that was a much tougher 3.5, game streak, or you can go ahead and say 4-game streak. I mean, the first half against Georgia was obviously tough too. And then, you play a top 25 Missouri, they're still top 25. But I would say out of the last, 5 opponents, I don't know that Missouri's not the worst of the 5. So, winning 34-0 is great. That's nothing. I'm not trying to take shots at Missouri, obviously missing a starting quarterback, missing a starting running back, one of your top 3 receivers. They've been having kind of issues all year. But, with everything they had going on with them, I would view them as the worst of the 5 teams. But what are your thoughts on where Alabama's at? What are you hoping to maybe see coming out of the bye week? Just wherever you want to take this conversation, we can take it.
Yeah, it's so strange. I mean, I guess that's probably the word to use when describing this Alabama team, because you mentioned the way they played against Wisconsin on the road, especially offensively, and how efficient they were with Jalen Milroe just dealing, the way he played and the offense played in the first half against Georgia. I mean, you really thought, hey, this is the style of offense that we're probably going to see from Alabama this year. But the problem is we haven't really saw that since then. We saw in the second half that the running game got going a little bit against Missouri, but like you mentioned, Missouri was beat up. That game was over at halftime. I think 13-0 at half, but the game felt over at that point because Missouri could not muster anything on offense with all the injuries they had. So it's just been a strange year for Alabama. I'm still not sure what to expect from this Alabama team. I mean, that's just the truth. We're 8 games in. Is it 8 games, 7 games in, whatever it is?
Eight. Yeah.
And it's just they've been Jekyll and Hyde, and it's just I don't know what to expect. I'm hoping the bye week was a good kind of reset button for this team, for Jalen Milroe, for some of those guys to get healthy. Jaden Roberts, which is something we hadn't really talked about, is how he has been nicked up really for the majority of the season, and is really kind of split those reps at right guard. So if he can get healthy, Milroe, I know they've denied that he's been injured, but everybody's hurt or banged up this time of year. And with the amount of hits he's taken this season, especially with a more focus on him running the football. So I don't know what to expect from this team this week. I'm hoping, like I mentioned, that the bye week was an opportunity for them to get healthy, to kind of clean up some of the things. We're like, hey, this is not working for us offensively. This is what's working for us offensively. And these are the things we need to continue to kind of build on, which I think is the running game, which I think is going to be the key for this team down the stretch. If the running game is not there, then I'm not sure how far this team can go. But if they can find a consistent rushing attack with not only Milroe, but more specifically with Justice and with Jam, then I really believe that this team can do, and accomplish pretty much anything, including a run in the playoffs. So I'm just hoping to see a more concentrated effort of establishing a run, of finding an identity on offense, because there hasn't been one this season. And I think defensively, it's kind of building on what they've done over the past, 2 games or so. I thought it was decent against Tennessee. It was obviously pretty good against Missouri. But there was some factors that led to those things. But I think opportunistically, this defense is where you would like it to be. And, Garrett Nussmeier has been prone to turn over the football, which is something we'll get into shortly. So I just want the defense to kind of build on what they've been doing, and the offense to kind of, dive deeper into that rushing attack, and hopefully down the stretch can establish some identity on offense.
Yeah, and we've been talking over at the Cover Crimson message board. A lot of great conversations happening over there, and just I love a lot of the topics that you started this week as far as conversations. We've had fun with it. We've done everything from favorite LSU Alabama memory to kind of matchups. I did something on that last night. There's just been a lot of great conversations, but we were talking about, score predictions. Jake Thomas, your cousin, he did, started his kind of score prediction and got that conversation kind of kicked off. And I thought he made some great points. I think his final score was 24-17, I believe.
Think so. Yeah.
And yours was 31-20.
Yeah.
So a little bit higher. And as I'm like looking at this and reading y'all's, reasoning behind it, and it's both great stuff, it's like I can understand where both of you are coming from, right? Because, on one hand, I kind of know where I'm leaning, and I'm leaning Alabama, but there's a lot of caveats to that. But as far as like it's a 58-point over under, and Alabama's favored by 2.5 points. So that's like a 31-28, a 30-27 type of game is what, Vegas is currently predicting, obviously in Alabama's favor. In part of me thinks it will be higher than that. But that is dictated based off of Alabama figuring things out in the bye week, guys getting healthy. If Milroe is dealing with some lingering issues, I don't know if he has or hasn't, but if he has, it's been a couple of weeks to kind of get some of that stuff resolved. Like you said, Jaden Roberts, obviously giving him a couple of weeks. And sometimes these injuries, it's kind of like I think Jaheim Otis last year, or during these bye weeks and stuff, we didn't know exactly what was going on. And so it's like maybe he'll be better after a couple of weeks. But some of this stuff is like you got to have surgery at the end of the season. So even though you're getting time off, there's your problems are your problems for that entire year from an injury standpoint. And so that could be the case with Jaden Roberts. I have no idea. Or maybe the bye week did help him. We'll know soon enough. But, when you start factoring in all that, you start saying, okay, that can kind of lead to, if they can get some things figured out, have a good game plan. You look at what they did after the last bye week against Georgia, great game plan going in, great game. I mean, best offense and defense. And then in the second half, if that game would have been close, who knows what you would have seen. So it's like you expect that. And then at the same time, though, it's like Alabama's really not played well on the road. The penalties have been a problem. They've been putting themselves behind the sticks when they've been doing that. LSU is kind of like South Carolina. I don't think they're quite South Carolina as far as their edge duo, but they're really effective on the outside. You factor in that home crowd advantage for LSU. It's 3rd and 9. That crowd's going crazy, hard to communicate. LSU knows you're throwing the football. Like, what is that going to lead to? So then you kind of start to question that. But then you look at the other side, and it's like Alabama's been really good on defense, generating turnovers. And Garrett Nussmeier, for whatever reason, they're putting a lot on his plate right now. And I think, he's a really, really good quarterback. I don't want to take away he's a gunslinger, fearless quarterback, but I just think that they haven't found, it's kind of like Alabama at times where they haven't found the right balance offensively. And Garrett Nussmeier will throw you the football if you're a defensive guy. And so, that will limit LSU's possessions, or as far as their scoring possessions, potential scoring possessions. So then you start looking at it, it's like that 24-17, which is way below 58 that Jake was predicting. It's like I could kind of see that type of game too, because I was all on board for a high scoring Tennessee-Alabama matchup. Right. And how did that turn out? Really low scoring, because Alabama couldn't take advantage of the turnovers that they were getting. Tennessee, they continue to have their offensive issues, turning the football over, limiting their own possessions. So really, I can kind of see this going both ways, Stacey.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the beauty of this matchup, because both teams are so similar, especially offensively, where neither team is probably running the football like they would like to, and that has led to some inconsistency from the quarterback. And it's easy to blame the quarterbacks, and I do it. Every fan does it, but when you're not getting any help from the backs, and whether that's because just not making an effort to run the football, not blocking well, whatever the reason is, it just puts so much pressure on the quarterback where he feels like every time he throws the football, he's got to make a big play. And when your quarterback's playing that way, that just leads to turnovers. It leads to putting your defense in bad positions. So I just feel like these teams kind of mirror each other a lot offensively, and that's leading to where I'm with you. I could see this game being well below that. Would you say 58 as the total? Well below that. But then I go back and think, like you said, the way they started Alabama after the bye week against Georgia, where they come out and was it 28 points in the first quarter?
Yes.
I'm not expecting that, obviously, but they're certainly capable of coming out and just firing on all cylinders and looking unstoppable. So I don't know what to expect, because there's just been so much inconsistency from this offense, and LSU is kind of in the same boat. So it's hard to kind of say, yeah, this is going to be a high scoring game, or I think this is going to be on the lower scoring side. So good luck. I would not bet on this game, whether you're talking about the spread, whether you're talking about the over under. I would stay so far away from this game, because the inconsistency of both these teams are making this matchup difficult to kind of put a number on.
Well, what are you expecting, right? What do you if I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, I'm taking Bama, I'll give up the 2.5 points. What are you banking on in order for that to happen that you haven't seen yet? You're banking on Jalen Milroe going on the road in a very hostile environment. We talked about this before he played Tennessee, where it's like, how many really, really tough environments has he played in where he's also going against a good defense? Sometimes he's played, in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and maybe Auburn's defense was pretty good that year, but from a team standpoint, Auburn wasn't great. You talk about Texas A&M. A&M's defense was pretty darn good. Kyle Field is certainly a hostile environment, but from a team standpoint, how much was A&M doing offensively to put Alabama's offense were in a reactive type of mindset where it's like, we got to score every time we touch the football? Like Alabama's defense, I brought it up, from that game. Jalen Milroe goes out there, he throws an interception. Alabama's defense goes out there, and like 2 plays later, I think it was 2 plays later, it might have been the next play, within the first 3 plays later, the defense is handing Jalen Milroe and the offense back the football, and to where there was never this massive pressure. And while I think Alabama's defense can generate some turnovers with the way that Garrett Nussmeier has been playing, with the way that they've been playing as far as forcing turnovers, I mean, 4 out of 5 SEC games, they forced 3 or more turnovers. That's exceptional. 14 turnovers in the last 5 games. That's almost 3 per game. That is absurd, and that's in insane SEC play.
Yeah.
And so, you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, they're going to give Jalen Milroe and them some opportunities. But when I'm looking at it's a very hostile environment for Jalen Milroe, and you haven't seen him go against the combination of really good defense and be in a hostile environment and play well. Because the one time you've really seen that, and really I wouldn't even say that against Tennessee, because offensively Tennessee never really put Alabama in a position where they were feeling threatened or they had to score every time they touched it. But what I will say is you've seen him play pretty well in some of those situations, and you've seen him not play well. And so you're banking on him having a really good performance. You're banking on Alabama cleaning up the penalty issues. If you run the football and you get 7 yards in the second 3, and then you get a holding call or you get a false start. Now it's 2nd and 8. Now it's 2nd and 13. It's like you've now put yourself back in 2nd and long, and you've put yourself behind the sticks. And so, you're assuming that's going to get cleaned up. And I just don't think that penalties are a type of thing that get cleaned up throughout the course of a season.
Right.
So, that's where I'm having trouble. But at the same time, there is something, in my opinion, believing in Alabama's ability to get healthy in some key spots, and the young guys having a couple of weeks, the secondary having a couple of weeks to get some things figured out, continue to get better. You've seen a lot of game reps in action. You can go back, watch film, reflect a little bit. This is what you're doing well. This is what you're not doing well. This is what we've got to work on. And then you're looking at Jalen Milroe, and it's like he started to show signs of life against Missouri. And so if he can build on that, maybe he started getting his confidence back a little bit. Still don't think he had the burst that he had, on some of those runs, but at least he was willing to do it, and he was a threat doing it. So you're hoping, a couple of weeks, maybe he's in an even better position to get some of that stuff back. I mean, you look at what he did to LSU's defense last year on the ground. Are you going to get that? Maybe, maybe not. LSU is much better defensively than they were last year. But, so there are some encouraging signs, but, I'm looking at this and I'm saying you are banking on some things that you really haven't seen too much from this Alabama team yet.
Right. And that's kind of the whole conundrum we're in as we break down this matchup, because there is so much unknown. Milroe has not really proven that he can go on the road in a hostile environment and take down a good team. I mean, and he's not had that many opportunities, like you mentioned, but he didn't play well against Tennessee. I mean, and it's not only just decision making; it was off target throws. In that game, his off target percentage was 19%, which was about 3 times as high as his season average. So when you're making bad decisions and off target in your passing game, nearly a quarter of the time, that's not going to win you a lot of football games, especially on the road in the SEC. So. But the beauty of it is Milroe doesn't have to be perfect. He doesn't have to play like he did in that first quarter against Georgia for Alabama to win football games. And that's why I keep coming back to this rushing attack for Alabama, and why I believe it was so important against a pretty solid Missouri defense in the second half there to be able to establish the run, hit some big plays, whether it was Justice or Jam, picking up some conversions on 3rd and short. If Alabama can just do those things offensively and allow Milroe to become comfortable in the game before he has time to become uncomfortable, then I think that's just going to help the offense even more and help Milroe even more. And look, I certainly think Milroe is capable of playing well on Saturday night in Baton Rouge, but I do need to see it before I can just say, pound my fist on the table and say, yeah, he's going to throw for 250 and run for another 75. I got to see it, man. I just have to. And it's almost that way with Nussmeier for LSU. I mean, if LSU's not able to run the football on Saturday night, which they really haven't shown to be able to do against good teams, he's going to turn the football over. I mean, it's just kind of who he is. You mentioned he's that gunslinger type, almost like I'm not going to say he's Brett Favre, but he plays like Brett Favre. Like, hey man, if I can throw it, I'm going to. And so there's going to be opportunities for this Alabama defense to create some turnovers. And then can the offense, unlike the Tennessee game, take advantage of that? Because that was the nail in the coffin for Alabama. You can talk about the second half all you want to of that game, but if Alabama capitalizes on those 3 first half turnovers from Tennessee, that is a completely different football game, and they were not able to. So Alabama has to be able to do that if they do force some turnovers from the LSU offense. And, and LSU's got some playmakers. Mason Taylor at tight end, Lacey out wide. I know they have another receiver that's a little banged up. Is he back? Aaron Henderson's playing really well, the former Alabama player. So they have some weapons on offense. And so you mentioned the secondary, that young group of guys. They've got to start. They got to play well. I think they're getting better. They haven't been would you say they've been better than what you expected, the secondary?
Man, that's tough because it's almost like I want to say yes. How would I feel if USF capitalizes and Tennessee capitalizes more? and there's been some other games. South Carolina missed on some. If teams had taken advantage of everything that was there downfield, or at least 50% more even of what was available downfield, how would we feel? And so I really try to separate the production, or what the perceived production, from, okay, just imagine if they had given up a lot of those, and there are situations, and I've defended them, and Kane Womack, it's been interesting. Anytime I've defended guys on certain plays, Kane Womack's kind of come through and kind of reiterated that. Like, there are times where a guy maybe has a step vertically, but the cornerback's actually in pretty good position. He's in phase. It's going to take a perfect throw from the quarterback, and they don't get it. And that can be Carson Beck. That could be Byron Brown. There's been a lot of situations where that has happened. And so, those are not really the plays I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones where it's pretty blatant. And there have been a couple in multiple games, and that kind of will change your perception. But I also think that, one of the big concerns we had, or at least I had, coming into the season, was the way that Kane Womack schemes things defensively. It's pressure into turnovers rather than pressure into sacks. So you're not going to get the pass rush production that you maybe had. And you were losing Dallas Turner. You were losing Chris Braswell after losing Will Anderson the year before. I mean, that's 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick all at the same position. It's like, okay, who was going to be that guy? Quandarius Robinson is a good player. He's shown some flashes. Can he be that guy? Can he be a Dallas Turner? And I think he has been productive. He's done what he needed to. Quay Russaw getting hurt, I think, has affected things. But when you combine the fact that, the pressure into turnovers rather than pressure into sacks means a quarterback's going to be able to get the football off. Obviously you're trying to strip sack it or do whatever as well, i.e. Quay Russaw against Carson Beck in the Georgia game. But a lot of times it's like interception basis, vision-oriented defense. And so you're watching and you're saying, okay, if that quarterback does get that football off, that doesn't really – what will really aid a young secondary or a poor secondary is guys getting home in the pass rush and not even letting them get the football off. You don't have to worry. So it's like that was something that we worried about. And we've seen that come to fruition a little bit. But, so it's a tough it's a good question, but it's a tough question to answer, because I think my perception, it's almost like I've been in some ways at times more concerned about the run stopping ability than I've been about, the downfield stuff, because I understand that that's going to lead to big plays, explosive plays, but that's a couple a game. Right. And those, I mean, that's points, but it's like, I want, if they were susceptible to that, but they were rock solid with the run fits and all that stuff, and there hadn't been those issues, I probably would feel a little bit better about the defense overall than maybe I have. But I do think they have started to figure some things out, and hopefully having an entire bye week, so a couple of weeks kind of reflect. Hopefully they can continue to build on that against LSU.
Yeah, and you talked about the defense, how you feel about them overall, and I'm with you on that. Football is give and take, and I think we've talked about that before. If you've got a young secondary that's inexperienced, you got to count on not only your guys getting beat in man-to-man scenarios, but there's going to be bust. So if that's coming, you better be able to stop the run. And there's been too many instances where Alabama just couldn't do that, and that's led to some of those 15 to 18 play drives for the opponents. And
just to cut it, what it does is, if you can stop the run, then you're putting your young secondary guy in a position where he knows pass is coming. And if you can eliminate, if it's 3rd and 9, it's an obvious passing situation. You now have removed one thing that freshman or that new starter playing a new position has to worry about, which is, I know they're throwing the football. It's just a matter of what they're doing. Anything that you can take off their plate certainly helps.
Yeah, and so it's just, I think if you're Kane Womack, then you have to kind of look, and I thought they did pretty good against Missouri. I thought in the second half, late in the game, when Missouri racked up most of their rushing yards on that one drive with all the backups in for Alabama, really skewed the stat sheet. But overall, I thought Alabama was pretty good against the run in that game. But if you're Kane Womack, you have to, I think, look at this defense and say, look, I know we're a little susceptible in the back end because of the youth and inexperience. We've had some injuries back there. Bray Hubbard's now having to play because Keon Sabb's hurt. You know, whatever the case is. So we need to be a little better against the run so we can take some of that pressure off those DBs. And I think, from overall, the secondary's been okay. It's probably about where I expected it to be, considering all the changeover. I just thought that Alabama defensively would be a little better against the run than what they are or what they have been, or at least more consistent. Because at times they're really good against the run, but then you'll catch a drive where the team's getting 6-8 yards a carry, and so just more consistency, which is a word we've used a lot to describe this team this season on both sides of the football.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. I mean, I think Dylan Sampson got some stuff going, in the second half, especially where he ripped off some pretty explosive runs. But trying to think, it hadn't been like it's been through explosives. Like when you looked at Alabama's rushing success with their running backs early in the year, it's like, oh man, they're averaging 6+ yards per carry or 7+ yards per carry, and it's like the consistency was clearly not there, though. It was explosives that was leading to it. Right. So it watching Alabama's defense, it really hadn't been explosives that have led to that. It's been situational. If it's 3rd and 2 and they run the football, they're getting it a lot of times. You can't get that stop on 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3. It's pretty consistently picking up. Sometimes it's just 3 yards. Against Vanderbilt, a lot of people, you come out of that game and you're like, man, Vanderbilt was able to kind of have their way with Alabama's run defense. And when you look at the numbers, it doesn't really reflect that. But watching it, the times that they were choosing to run the football, you would see a lot of negative plays. But when they really needed certain yardage, they were able to get it, stay ahead of the sticks a lot and do some of those things. Now, granted, Alabama also did a really good job of having early down success, and they couldn't get off the field on 3rd down, which was the big storyline from that game, or one of them at least. But that is – the more that you can put, I think LSU is going to try to run the football more. I think watching what Garrett Nussmeier has done, especially coming off a bye week, Brian Kelly and company are going to say, hey, we need to take some off of this guy's, shoulders. And it's not that they still believe in the guy, I guarantee you, but it's like, hey, let's give him, defenses more that they have to worry about. And it's like you look at LSU's offensive line, they got a couple of good, pretty good runners. It's like, it's the same thing as Alabama with their run game, where you don't understand why they've struggled. You look at the individual pieces and it's like they should be good. But when they try to run the football, they can't dominate. They can't get consistent movement. There's always, you might see a good run here, good run there. And you started seeing more consistency. Like against Missouri, you saw a lot more consistency in the second half. But it was like you could never really see either one of these two teams control games with their rushing attack. Right. But I do think that LSU is going to try to do that. I think Alabama's going to try to do that coming out of the bye week. I really do. We'll see. But it depends on if the other defense can force them to stay in a situation where it's like, no, we're going to put this game on Jalen Milroe's shoulders. We're going to stop your run game, and he's going to have to beat us. It's Alabama stopping LSU's run game and saying, no, Garrett Nussmeier, we want the guy throwing another 50 times, because when he throws it 50 times, he's going to throw you a couple. It to me, a big part of how this game plays out is which defense is able to achieve that more.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's we talked about earlier how these two teams kind of mirror each other. And who would have thought, you'd have told me 10 years ago that neither Alabama or LSU had a consistent running game. I wouldn't have believed you. It's crazy how it has changed, because both programs still have dudes along the offensive line. I mean, they both have dudes in the backfield, but for whatever reason, I mean, I scratch my head about it every day. Why can Alabama not consistently run the football? It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. I can't wrap my mind around it, but I'm with you. Whichever defense puts the game on the shoulders of the opposing quarterback probably has the best chance of winning this football game. So there's a lot. There's a lot in this game, man. This is a fantastic matchup.
You hit the. Just think about it from an individual position perspective. Look at Alabama's offensive line. It's talented. It's got
Mhm.
returning starters. It added the best center in the transfer portal in all of college football. And that's a guy who got up, he gained 15, 16, 18 pounds. So he's better equipped to handle, the run blocking stuff in the SEC. And he's played really well, by the way. So you're looking at the offensive line, you're like, okay, Kalen DeBoer and kind of what he did at Washington, does Alabama's offensive line fit that? The Michael Penix Jr. dropping it back, 45, 50 times a game. One running back who's really getting any sort of significant workload whatsoever. No, it kind of doesn't. But one thing that you would think that it'd be able to do is they still got those hogs. You'd think they'd be able to run the football. You look at the tight ends. Are the tight ends a bunch of Amari Nyblacks where they're, catching, I'd say catching a ton of passes. He didn't catch a ton of passes at Alabama, but when you looked at him, did you see run blocker? Or did you see pass catcher?
Right.
You saw pass catcher. Is that what Alabama's tight ends are right now? Do you look at Robbie Utes and see that? Do you really look at CJ Dupree or, maybe Josh Cuevas a little bit, but you look at Danny Lewis? These are run blocking, big 6'4", 6'5", 250, 255, 260-pound tight ends that you would think they are effective run blockers. That's what's crazy. You look at Kendrick Law and you look at Jeremy Bernard, and it's like, what are these guys doing out on the perimeter? They're blocking their asses off.
Yeah.
They're getting the job done. You look in the backfield. They got Jalen Milroe, who is going to strain defenses. The example I always use is RG3 and Alfred Morris, for Washington back in the day, where the presence of RG3 and his legs took so much pressure off of Alfred Morris, in that backfield and the way that they designed things and the way they did things. So having a dual threat quarterback that is a +1 in your run game that's going to take away the defense's attention, you would think, okay, that's going to aid your traditional run game. Even though he's taking away carries from those guys or volume from those guys, you would think that's going to help. You look at the talent that Alabama actually has at that position. Absurd talent, 5-star talent, top 100 talent, top 5 running backs in their respective classes. You look at all these individual parts and everything would point to this is one of the most dominant run games in all of college football. Not a doubt in my mind. Yet it's not. It's not even close. I mean, when you look at the Alabama offense, rushing offense, they're just inside the top 50. And a lot of that success has been due to Jalen Milroe and explosive plays from the running backs, which, but the consistency factor has been almost non-existent. To me, that's been one of the most mind-boggling things about this entire Alabama team. Offense, defense, coaching staff, doesn't matter, is their inability to run the football effectively consistently.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if we're just being honest, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm not that smart, but it just with what they have on the offensive line. You mentioned the tight ends, who I think are 2 of the best blocking tight ends in the country. Those dudes put in the work. Kendrick Law is a animal on the edge as their blocking receiver. So why? Why can they not run the football consistently? That's the word we need to keep, because
consistently, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because any point in time in the game, they could bust one for 75. There's no doubt. But I mean, we even saw that with Richard Young late in the game against Missouri, where he breaks that 62-yarder, to close out the game. I mean, it's just, where are those, 4 yards over and over again where it just wears the defense out? How is that not part of this offense? It doesn't make any sense. And I think that's led to some of the inconsistent play from Jalen Milroe as well. I mean, it all goes hand in hand. It all plays in together. It's a team sport for a reason. If your running game's not very good, it's not likely you're going to get exceptional play from your quarterback. So it works together. The offense needs to gel. They need to be better all around. And if they can find some sort of consistency in the running game, the offense has a chance to be really, really good, because we've seen what Jalen Milroe is able to do when he can stretch the defense, when he can, force the defense to play man coverage on a 3rd and long. And, they break contain, and before you know it, he's 50 yards downfield and you don't even know where he's at. So we know what he can do when those situations come up, but Alabama's got to be able to get themselves in those situations by establishing a consistent running game. And until they do that, we're just left kind of scratching our heads at what the answer is offensively.
Well, it allows you to control the game more. And that's such, like, it's not just for that side of the football. It takes pressure off of Jalen Milroe. Certainly it does. But it also takes pressure off your defense. Like if they're on the field for 17, 18 plays, hey guys, we're going to be able to put together, a pretty strong drive here. We're going to be able to eat 5, 6, 7 minutes off of this clock, and you can catch your breath and kind of gather yourselves, figure some things out on the sidelines. It's like Alabama has not been able to do that. I mean, the perfect example to an absolute extreme in both directions was Vanderbilt. And that was simply defense every time Vanderbilt touched the football, it was long, sustained drives. It was controlling things. That defense is out there for a long time, and then the offense is going out there and is 3 and out, or a couple of explosive plays to put them in a scoring position, but it's nothing consistent. It's not keeping your defense off the field. And then you end up seeing, 42 minutes of time of possession for Vanderbilt. That's how you reach that point. And that is the most extreme, but we've kind of seen that all year, where it's like, I mean, when your defense needs it, they can't get it from your offense. And that has been, the part of that is the defense's fault. I mean, this isn't me saying that everything's the offense's fault, but
right.
I was saying back then, everybody was wanting to give the offense a pass. Hey, they've scored 35 points in 17 minutes of action. Like, you can't put anything on them. It's like, no, you can. You absolutely can, because they're not doing their part to help out their defense. And if they maybe could have given their defense a little bit of a break, given them time to collect themselves a little bit, who knows? Maybe they go out there and they get that one key stop that they need against Vanderbilt, and then they start getting some momentum and like, all right, we got this, fellas. But things can get away from you very quickly. And I just don't think Alabama has been playing complimentary football nearly enough this year, but they have a chance to this weekend against LSU. I think Alabama's offense is going to have some opportunities to take advantage of some turnovers. We talked about it going into the Tennessee game. Alabama's defense gave the offense those opportunities, and they did not capitalize. You've got to be a lot more aggressive when you do get those opportunities. I don't like the fact that when they're forcing a turnover, they're going out there, there's now on the 40-yard line going in. You need to be taking some vertical shots. That's kind of the thing that you do. People know that it's coming, but you do it anyways. It seems like they're not aggressive enough when those opportunities present themselves. And that's something that I would like to see from the offense moving forward. Whether it's I don't know if it's something going on with Jalen Milroe. For whatever reason, the deep ball hadn't been there. I understand wanting to get away from it a little bit, but you also got to, give him some opportunities to find one. Because I think once he finds one or two, he's going to start catching that confidence and that groove back. And I think that's going to open up a lot for Alabama's offense as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word confidence, and I think we say that word a lot, but there is nothing more true than when a player, especially a quarterback, is playing with confidence and when he's not playing with confidence, and what that means for how he's performing in a game. When Jalen Milroe is confident, go look at that first half that first quarter against Georgia. I mean, he looked like the best player in college football. I mean, he was the best football player in college football in that first quarter against Georgia. But then you look when he's not playing with as much confidence, whether that's because of, a lingering injury, just not feeling it, whatever the case is, you see that off-target throw percentage go up to 20%. And so Jalen Milroe needs that confidence back. I'm with you. I think if he can find one or two of those deep balls, that's all it's going to take for him to kind of get over the hump and get back into a groove. And I think that's one of the keys to this game against LSU is we've talked about how Alabama needs to establish that rushing attack, but hitting that vertical pass, whether it's to a Ryan Williams, a Kobe Prentice, who was so close on one against Missouri, whether even something as simple as throwing a short pass and letting a guy like Kendrick Law take it to the house, on a yak. So just something to give Milroe some confidence in the passing game as well could help this offense as they hit the stretch, the down stretch of the season. Just 4 games remaining, and it's kind of now or never for this team. I mean, this is virtually an elimination game for both Alabama and LSU in terms of the playoff. Obviously, anything can happen because we've seen it happen already this season. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if everybody finished with at least 3 losses the way this college football season has gone. So But it is pretty much an elimination game, so it's now or never for this Alabama team to kind of play that complementary style that's kind of avoided them all year.
So, just to kind of put a bow on this, how are you feeling? Are you confident in their ability to right some of these ships and get things corrected? Are you thinking Alabama's going into Baton Rouge and getting a win tomorrow? And really, what's kind of your confidence level on it?
Whew. Well, I'm confident that Alabama can go in there and get the win. I would, we brought it up on Cover Crimson on the message board about the ESPN matchup predictor had Alabama, basically a 70% chance of winning the game. That is way too high for my liking. I would probably go more of a 55 to 45 for Alabama. It's probably closer to 50-50 if we're being honest, since it is a road game in Baton Rouge. But I do like Alabama in this matchup. I think they have – I think because of the way Nussmeier plays and the way Alabama's defense plays, that matchup is kind of tough for LSU offensively. So I think Alabama's going to force some turnovers. And I don't think you're going to see the Alabama offense go, let's just say, 0 for 3 on, not scoring any points off turnovers. So I think points off turnovers are going to be critical in this matchup. I think Alabama starts to find or continues to develop what they did on the ground in the second half against Missouri, find a little more consistent success on the running game, take some of that pressure off Milroe. And I think this offense, I'm not expecting a real high scoring game. I think I said 31-20 is the final score. So still keeping it, under that 58 point total. So I do like Alabama. I think they're going to play better. I don't think they're going to play elite, but I do think you're going to start to see some more consistency from this team, both offensively and defensively on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's the number one thing, and it's kind of like to me, and I thought it at the very beginning. It didn't make any sense. This wasn't a hindsight with the way things actually played out. But when Alabama decided to take the football in Knoxville, I didn't like it.
Nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that.
Well, and I mean, Tennessee's offense is what had been struggling.
Yeah,
and it's like you got a young quarterback, a redshirt freshman quarterback who had been prone to some mistakes. I understand your defense had been struggling, but you gave Tennessee the opportunity to potentially stack drives at the end of the first half and then turn around and get it at the beginning of the second half. You were given the opportunity to give yourself that potential advantage. Alabama last year with Jalen Milroe, whether you're talking about the Tennessee game, you're talking about the LSU game, the Ole Miss game, second half, first drives, he can really get some stuff going, and the offense was able to really get some stuff going. It's a different team. Different offensive coordinator, totally understand that, but just I didn't like that decision. And then you have to, if you lose the toss, then you got to get the football anyways. So it's I'm not saying just make sure that LSU gets the football first, but if you have that opportunity, definitely do that.
I agree.
But also if you get the football first, you've got to avoid setting that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? You set the feel for the game, the vibe for the game.
Yeah.
There's a word for that. I don't know.
The tone.
The tone. Yes. Thank you. Set the tone by penalties.
Yep.
And poor, the snap coming early and Jalen Milroe not expecting it. The way that first drive looked against Tennessee set the tone for the entire game as far as the way that the offense was going to look. Come out playing sharper, play more disciplined. It's going to be loud just like it was in Knoxville. You've got to figure out, hey, we're going to have some trouble with this throughout this game. I'm sure we are. But this first drive, we're going to be as laser focused as you can be. We're going to start this first drive off correct. If we can go down here and score points on the first drive, start fast, you're going to really take that crowd out of it. Like they were asking Brian Kelly at the beginning of the week about, getting to play this game at home and all those things. And he's like, hey, the crowd really only becomes a major advantage for you when you do what you need to do to get them into the game.
Right.
If you're not doing what we need to do as far as, big plays and, getting some key stops and really giving them a lot to get fired up about, you can take crowds out of it really quick and it can become not really an advantage. So you've got to be able to do that if you're Alabama. Take that crowd out of it early. Doesn't mean it's going to be for 4 quarters necessarily. They might start finding some momentum and stuff later, but you've really established yourself as the one who's dictating in the game. Right. I think that's absolutely important. Stacey, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
No, man. I just think this is kind of a big moment for Kalen DeBoer in his first year as the head coach. I mean, it's obviously not went. In the truth is, I don't think 6-2 is too surprising for most fans. It's just for whatever reason we can't get over that loss to Vanderbilt. Really, that's really what has kind of changed the tone. We talked that word again of the season for Alabama. So I think
if you swap Georgia and Vanderbilt as far as win loss, you think the vibe will be completely different.
I do. I believe it would be. I mean, whether that's right or wrong is a different story and a different conversation, but that's just the way it is. And I just feel like this is a very big moment for Coach DeBoer. And, you know, he's been a winner everywhere he's been. You brought up his what he's done after a bye week as a head coach. I suggest if you're not a member over at covercrimson.com, you need to go sign up and do that right now so you can see that really interesting stuff there. So I'm a believer in DeBoer. I really am. And so I think this is a big moment for him on Saturday night. And I think he could maybe turn the tide, so to speak, for this season in Baton Rouge.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's a lot going on. Alabama's got a basketball game tonight. So pumped about that. Obviously had a big win in the opener. This is going to be a fun team. It's going to be a deep team. So you've got the basketball game tonight. You brought this up over on the message board as well. You've got football coming up tomorrow night against LSU. If you're an Alabama fan, there's a lot to be excited about. We're talking about all of it over at covercrimson.com, but also, I mean, a lot of other football going on, a lot of other basketball. You got NFL. Go, head on over to mybookie.com and use the promo code next round and, make yourself a little bit of money, right? And why not capitalize on some of this stuff? I guarantee you an Alabama win would feel good tomorrow night, but an Alabama win where you put a little money in your pocket would probably feel even better. So, definitely head over to MyBookie and check that out. Stacey, I appreciate you, man. It's always good talking to you. This has been fun. We'll be back, doing some more stuff. We'll be doing the post-game show as soon as the game is over. And I want to encourage everybody, win, loss, doesn't matter. Well, we always have fantastic callers. We give you a chance to call in, share your thoughts, good or bad. We'll, react to it. If you got questions, we answer questions. A lot of times, especially when it's a loss, there's a lot of venting, but even, with some wins, beating South Carolina, I think there were just as many venting fans after that game as there was, the Vanderbilt loss, the week before. So definitely be ready to hop on with us on the post-game show. It's always informative. It's always a lot of fun. We love interacting. We love getting people's takes. Stacey, I appreciate you hopping on here with me, and we'll have to do this again soon, man.
Yes, sir.